are going to cross live now to the National Assembly in Abuja, where the Nigerian Senate is set to continue with the screening of the remaining 14 out of the 28 ministerial nominees forwarded last week by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Unfortunately, we did not have time to even...
Well, while this is underway, that's the screening of the ministerial nominees, we still have with us Arise News analysts Emmanuel Efeni and Wale. Mr. Emmanuel Efeni, please go on with your wonderful analysis.
Perhaps it's a good time to look at what the Senate did yesterday.
Yes.
As the Daily Sun newspaper is reporting, Senate screens confirmed Wike, Momo, others as ministers, urges Labour to shelve impending strike. Well, yesterday we were expecting more rigor from the Senate on the screening of the ministers, but apparently we did not see that yesterday. Take a bow and go. Questions, even where there were what looks like some confusion in credentials. I don't want to call it what it is not.
But isn't that closely related to the fact that there's no portfolios attached? So now the screen is almost like it's just open for all, not necessarily.
We just ask any question. But
Order 52.
Unfortunately, that's not being done.
Senate standing
but
orders.
I think there can be more rigor in what they are doing. They have an opportunity to do better today, and when it comes to the remaining 13 names.
All right, then the Senate President, of course, is addressing the floor. So let's take a listen to him.
So where a senator appears for screening, he shall not read his he shall not read his achievements in office. Where a senator is appearing for screening, he shall not read his achievements in office. And where a senator is a principal officer of the Senate, he shall appear, take his bow, and thereafter resume his seat until such a time that is sworn in as a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The floor is yours. Introduce yourself.
Your Excellency, Mr. Senate President, Your Excellency, Deputy Senate President, my distinguished colleagues, let me first, with deep gratitude to God for the journey of my life, thank Mr. President for nominating me as one of the nominees for the office of the Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Let me also thank the Senate President, the Deputy Senate President, the leadership of the Senate, and the entire distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for a very committed Senate, a Senate that is given and committed to Mr. Senate President, let me thank you very highly for a very united Senate under you. In this Senate, the number of months I've spent, you have not allowed anything like partisan politics to take place. And that shows that you're divine, and I'm happy that the opportunity to be part of making of this peaceful leadership of the Senate. It's a privilege, and I want to thank you. Unless Mr. President rules otherwise, to introduce myself, I'm Engineer Wednesday David Umahi, CON, Fellow of the Society of Nigeria of Engineers, Fellow of Technologists in Engineering. I don't know whether the rules permit me to say where I'm from, Mr. President. Okay, I'm from Umunaguburu, in Ohosra local government area of Ebonyi State. I'm a senator representing Ebonyi South Senatorial Zone, and by the privilege of our senators, the deputy leader of this Senate. I was party chairman from 2007 to 2008, caretaker chairman, and elected party chairman from 2008 to 2011, deputy governor from 2011 to 2015, governor, APC, governor from 2015, 2019, 2023. I attended Umunaga Primary School 1997 to 1977 and Ishago High School from 1978, and I left in 1979 to Government College Afibo, where I finished in 1982. Then I went to the first technological university in Nigeria. That was Anambra State University of Science and Technology from 1982 to 1987. I'm a civil engineer by profession and by training, and a structural engineer. I did my NYSC with Saipan SPA in Benin City, and I was heading the category 8 billion esclavos to Edun gas pipeline. I'm a Christian. I have a wife, Mrs. Richard Umahi. God blessed me with 7 children, 3 men and 4 female. I love tennis and swimming. Mr. President, I had wanted, if you give me the opportunity, to read my profile.
Let me thank our nominee, distinguished Senator David Umahi, for filling in the gap on his childhood from primary school to university and all that. The areas you want to take from are already before the public. If you Google Umahi, you know that he was once a party chairman, he was once a deputy governor, and he was a very outstanding governor, a performing governor for 8 years. And on entry into the Senate, he was the chairman of the stability group that produced the leadership in the Senate. And of course, the Senate in turn also bestowed on him the position of deputy of the Senate, a position that is still holding until the day he will be sworn in by Mr. President. So you and my colleagues to thank Mr. President for finding one of us worthy to be nominated to stand before us. You will now take a bow. Next nominee.
screening of ministerial nominees. After 59 days in office, President Tinubu transmitted the list of nominees to the upper legislative chamber on Thursday, just the day before the expiration of the 60-day constitutional deadline of the 28th of July. Like past Nigerian leaders, the president did not attach their portfolios. We're looking at nominees drawn from about 25 states of the Federation, comprising of 4 former governors, 6 former federal lawmakers, 2 former lawmakers, 3 serving presidential advisors, and 7 women, among others. Femi Gbajabiamila, the president's chief of staff, has confirmed that the president will submit the list of nominees from the remaining 11 states soon. Ahead of the screening, the federal government had asked the nominees to complete their documentation at the office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President at the National Assembly. The Senate promised a thorough exercise. The spokesperson of the Senate, Mr. Yemi Adaramodu, did say that Nigerians would not be disappointed with how it would conduct the screening. And so we saw day 1 yesterday, and what we're seeing is a continuation of that. It is speculated that the screening, for which the Senate shift its annual recess, will of course take a minimum of 3 days. The 109-member Senate is expected to grill the nominees on the value that they will add to governance if confirmed. As the tradition of the upper chamber is, the 3 senators from each of the states where nominees hail from may set the tone of the screening by either speaking in support or against each nominee before questions are put to them by senators. Going back to our live images in Abuja of the screening of the ministerial nominees underway now.
I am Adebayo Olawale.
Is there? Is it there? Is it now? Oh, okay. I think they are. Your CV is here. Maybe they are expecting to see Wale Edun, not Ola. Oh, Adebayo. Please check if you have Adebayo. Wale Edun. That. You have it? Yes. Okay, clerk, for those who do not have, please provide while he's speaking. But you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my great privilege to appear before you this afternoon to humbly seek your confirmation to enable me answer the call of our President, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and offer my service. I am from Ake, Abekuta, Ogun State. My mother was from the Majekodumi family of Ake, and on my father's side, I traced my lineage from the Honorable Adegboyega Edun, who was secretary to the Egba United government under colonial rule. And He was a significant contributor to the development and I had my early education at St. Paul's School, Ebute Meta in Lagos. And after that, in London, UK, where my parents were then living, working, and studying. I obtained my bachelor's degree in economics from the University of London, Queen Mary College, and a master's degree in development economics from the University of Sussex, England, which included research at the well-regarded Institute of Development Studies. My career path in investment banking, capital markets, economic policy formulation, and international development finance. After my youth service year, I began my professional life at Chase Merchant Bank in Lagos, which included training and exposure at Wall Street's Lehman Brothers and Chase Manhattan Bank's headquarters, both in New York. Thereafter, I was an investment officer at IFC, which is the private sector arm. I worked on macroeconomic policies, and in that role, I worked on macroeconomic policies and sector policies on Indonesia and India. Meanwhile, back home, entrepreneurial opportunities started unfolding, and I came back to Nigeria to take part in that process as a hands-on investor in a series of financial firms. And importantly, it was the government's liberalization of that sector that made it possible. I feel highly privileged and strong institutions, including a leading independent investment bank, a ratings firm that is now a subsidiary of a global ratings agency, and a stock exchange quoted bank, among other successful companies. Likewise, in answering a call to service in Lagos State, I am proud to have been a part of the stunning success achieved under the inspirational leadership of the then Governor Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in whose cabinet I served as Commissioner for Finance. Recall that Governor Tinubu took over in a most challenging time. He faced those challenges squarely and overcame them and was successful. And I played my own part in the design, the implementation of innovative, homegrown, technology-driven solutions that increased the resources available to government, grew the revenue in large quantities, and thereby gave government the wherewithal to spend on infrastructure, social services, and of course, job creation. And there are parallels today. We all know that these are challenging economic times, and they also need to be confronted, to be wrestled with, and to be defeated in an effort to build a competitive economy. Aside from economics, may I say that I have engaged in youth empowerment. I am involved in the International Award for Young People Nigeria, which runs the Duke of Edinburgh's award. And having been a national amateur boxing champion during my student days, I hope you are not too surprised at that. I've taken great interest in working with the state boxing associations in Ogun State and Lagos State to channel the energies of young people in the right direction. Your Excellency, distinguished senators, let me conclude by saying, in my view, and I'm sure in the view of so many, Nigeria is too well blessed with resources, both human and natural, not to be successful. At the outset of this new administration, I am hugely optimistic that that success will come. On a personal note, success for me would be to retain a record of competence and integrity during my service. I am Adebayo Olawale Edun, and I humbly seek your confirmation of my nomination so that I can join you in service of our great nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Wale Edun. Let me start from the left. Senator Wale, are you there? I'll go there in case there is something Wadada wants to say, and the senators from his state will correct.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I remain Senator Wadada Aliyu from Nasarawa State, Nasarawa West Senatorial District. Distinguished colleagues. Mr. Nominee, your resume speaks for you. And of course, it is an open secret that previous governments and the present government particularly is committed to managing our foreign exchange. And simple economics that we were taught in secondary school says that the price of any commodity is determined by market forces, demand and supply. Now, what would you do differently? Here, demand and supply, for us to supply, we must have what to supply. And the real sector in Nigeria is in comatose. What would you do differently to either see to the resuscitation of the real sector so that the polity will be productive and we will have what to supply so that we earn foreign exchange and beef up our foreign reserve? Otherwise, if that will not be done within the quickest possible time, what other means would you, if you emerge or eventually become the Minister of Finance, for the market forces to be balanced so as to manage effectively the foreign, our foreign exchange? Again, what will you do differently to ensure effective link between fiscal and monetary policies for effective outcome? Because really and truly, the fiscal and monetary policies so far, where we're coming from, they haven't really been really interconnected for effectiveness of the economy. And then again, what would you do differently to ensure the shock in our balance sheet of in the balance sheet of our debt portfolio? Thank you very much, Mr. Nominee. And before I sit down, as an elder polo player, to me, I say eyes on the ball.
Distinguished Senator Adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting as the chair. Very distinguished colleague. I quite agree with my colleague who fired the first salvo to ask questions. And because of the pedigree of the man standing before us this afternoon, who has been involved in so many achievements that Lagos as a state has recorded thus far, I strongly believe coming to the center stage is another great opportunity to showcase what is capable of doing in trying in assisting the current economic woes of our great country, Nigeria. Mr. President, before us is Mr. Adebayo Olawale Edun, who, according to his submission, which everybody have listened to, is from Ogun State. Ake precisely, the Ogun Central. And a senator representing Ogun State. And on behalf of the three of us, we are presenting to you a man who is not only committed, but who is dedicated to his job, and who have proven this over the years. Currently, is working with the present government as special advisor on monetary policies. And within the shortest time of assumption of this administration, the major economic reform that have been proposed thus far, which we believe in the long term will yield the desired fruit, which we all as a Nigeria are expecting. I strongly believe that this man will do all within his capacity to assist this present government to turn around the fortune of this country from the economic angle. And we in Ogun State strongly believe that this is one of our best. And we are presenting to this Senate that we're in total support of his nomination and further confirmation by this Senate. And we seek the understanding of our colleagues to please join to support Mr. Adebayo Olawale Edun as a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I so submit, distinguished colleague. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Mohammed Anju Mogoje, representing Gombe Central, Gombe State. Mr. Nominee, I stand here to support you. I stand to support all the submission given by my colleague, Senator Solomon Olalimeko. Mr. Nominee, I know you way back in the year around 2000. And you people from Lagos, led by you, came up with the idea of bringing in Enron company to stabilize the power system in Lagos. And I remember you are one of the key people that I was Minister of State for Power, who had series of meetings with you, and you defended fiercely the introduction of Enron to stabilize the power in Lagos State. Mr. Nominee, if by chance Mr. President appoints you either as a Minister of Finance or Minister of Power, what would you do? Will you go back to the Enron style and bring back something bigger than Enron to stabilize the Nigerian power system? Or what would you do differently to ensure that we have stable electricity in this country, without which we'll never have stable and vibrant economy in the country? I so submit. Thank you, but I support you 100%. He's a good person. He's well-grounded, very good. my series of meetings with him were so impressive that when I saw his name, I was very, very much impressed. I know that he will do wonders to this administration. Thank you.
The OGD.
Thank you, our Senate President, very distinguished senators. I am Otumba Engineer Benga Daniel, representing Ogun East Senatorial District. Let me start by saying that in Mr. Olawale Edun, for us it's a good day because in him we have somebody in whom we are very, very pleased. I don't want to waste time because my colleague, Senator Adeola, has said so much. All I just want to add is that Mr. Olawale Edun have been a professional of no misstanding in the last 35 or 40 years since I've known him. Many people might not be aware that it was by the whiskers that he missed being in the immediate past cabinet. But having said this, I'd like to ask Mr. Edun a simple question. It's common knowledge that Nigerians' debt today is in the region of about 40 trillion naira. When you add the ways and means to that, probably another 20 trillion naira is there. I'd like to know what your thoughts are and how you think we can get out of this debt quagmire. Having said that, Mr. President, sir, I have no doubt that Mr. Olawale Edun is one of the best in his generation. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Distinguished Senator Salisu Shuaibu Afolabi.
Mr. President of the Senate, sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues, I stand proudly today to identify with this nominee. He is my constituent from Ogun Central Senatorial District, the Senatorial District renowned for its excellence and patriotic favor. My name is Shuaibu Afolabi Salisu, representing Ogun Central. Mr. President of the Senate, distinguished colleagues, at a point in our history like now, we require a man like Wale Edun. If some of you were aware of the transformation of Lagos from a state that was making a paltry sum of 600 million naira internally generated revenue in 1999 to billions of naira in the first term of Bola Tinubu as governor, and today is in tens of billions of naira. If you are looking for the man who made that happen, you have the privilege of seeing him here today. Is Wale Edun. This man deployed technology to connect all the 38 tax stations in Lagos State, ensuring that the revenues of Lagos were being monitored as they happen. He blocked all the leakages. He streamlined the procurement process, ensuring that the resources of Lagos were utilized. It was when he was Commissioner for Finance that the funds of Lagos State were seized by the then federal government. It was through his ingenuity that Lagos survived that onslaught and it remained afloat among the committee of state. If you are looking for the man that managed Lagos State economy and it became the 5th largest economy in Africa and certainly the biggest in Nigeria, this is a man with an uncommon combination of public service finance, public service experience. He worked in World Bank, he worked in Chase Merchant Bank, and he has also led a number of other initiatives. Ordinarily, I should join my other 2 senators from Ogun State to plead that you should take a bow, but for two reasons, we will ask him questions. It will be a disservice for a man of his experience and expertise, a man that will require the support of the Senate now and then, to come here and not build the confidence in you, because the reforms of this administration, particularly in the economic space, will require the support of the Senate, and the Senate must have the confidence that the man they're entrusting that responsibility to is capable of doing so. Therefore, he is from Ogun State. When you have a good product, you are not afraid of that product being subjected to interrogation. So we will ask him questions. The second reason we will ask him question is this. This man is most likely, there's no price for guessing, is most likely going to be in charge of our finance and economy. Just yesterday, the president himself addressed the nation. This man that's going to be the anchor man will also have this platform to address the nation. So, Mr. Wale Edun, I'm proud of you from Ogun Central, from Ogun State. You have a pedigree that we are proud of, both your family and you as a person. What my colleagues would like to know, in summary, how will the renewed hope agenda of Mr. President translate to prosperity for our country and enhancement of welfare, well-being, and wellness of the ordinary citizen? Not just in terms of the growth in the GDP or some statistics of reduction in inflationary rate or reduction in MPC rate. You have done it before. In few words, just get that assurance, build that confidence. You are capable of doing it. Distinguished colleagues, after he has answered this question, I played with you. Give him the honor, give him the privilege, treat him decently, and let him take a bow. Thank you.
SARS, don't take over the work of the presiding officer. So let me call on dismissed Senator Neda.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My colleagues, my name is Senator Neda Imasue, Edo South Senatorial District. Mr. Wale Edun, welcome, and your CV speaks for itself, and for what you said so far, many of us are convinced. But I'm so concerned with two questions, one of which must have been asked differently by our colleagues here. You spoke so eloquently about how you helped as one of the teams that took Lagos State from where it was to a great height. That time is upon us now as a nation. And so we ask you, what are you going to do differently? What will you do now, given our economic depression today, to help Mr. President to revive our economy again, given the fall free of our naira, given the fact that the ordinary Nigerians can't even afford 3 square meals? 2, corruption is so endemic in our society. And one of the bastions, one of the agencies that fights corruption, that ought to fight corruption, is the Office of the Auditor General for the Federation. As you may know, the audit bill has not been signed. Be that as it may, you're also aware maybe that there's this tussle between that office and the Office of the Accountant General, and indeed the Office of the Minister of Finance. I believe, that office needs independence for it to work properly. And so I ask, will you be in the forefront to fight to make sure that that Office of the Auditor General will have the independence that it deserves so that it can ably fight corruption and reduce corruption in our country? Thank you.
Please, let's try and ask just questions so that we can stop. Distinguished Senator Abiru.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, sitting as the chair, and my colleagues. In fact, I'm highly elated for this opportunity because I must confess, the nominee before us is somebody that I know very well. So it will be very, very unfair if I don't make my own remarks here. And at the same time, I probably will also be sharing, I'll be asking him to share some thought with us. Number one, let me acknowledge that, it was my senior in banking, so people like us grew up in banking to know him. And from his CV, you can attest that he's an accomplished banker. Equally, he was my predecessor as the former Commissioner of Finance in Lagos. As you are all aware, I was also a Commissioner of Finance, but years after he had passed through that particular corridor. And part of the major legacies that he left behind is part of what we rode on and continue to improve the lot of Lagos, and which is still continuing till today. So in Mr. Edun, I see a well-accomplished professional, but there is a part that my colleagues, so I join and I support everything my colleagues have said as well. But there's a part that I think has been conspicuously missing, which is the fact that he's equally a grassroots politician. I can attest to that. And I also must also attest to the fact that even in this current dispensation, this current administration, I've worked closely with him. So I support his nomination, just like everybody had done, but I also would like to ask him a question, not necessarily a question, but I would like him to share some of the reforms that this current administration has embarked upon, because I happen to know that he's also a part and parcel of all the reforms that we are beginning to see. And specifically, I would like him to speak to the issues around the macroeconomic distortions that this current administration is trying to confront and improve upon. So, Mr. President, distinguished ladies, my distinguished colleagues, I support Mr. Edun's nomination, and I plead that we all support his nomination. Thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleague.
Just take a minute, since we are sitting together. You must have conferred on what you were going to ask. If you had missed something, I'll just add it so that I can come to the leadership.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting as chair, my respectful, distinguished colleagues, and the nominee. I join all the colleagues to congratulate you for the nomination, and we believe that is one of the best choices that this country will make. I have just a question, and it's related to the fiscal policy. Government responsibility is to cater for growth and stability. It also should concern itself with allocation and also the distribution of such resources, generating the resources in terms of revenue, and then coming to the budgetary system. Looking at what has been going on, and with the perspective of what we were able to achieve in the 9th Senate, with the cycle of budget coming from the beginning of the year to the end, there is a kind of lacuna I have seen, which always make us to amend the Appropriation Act, either the supplementary or the main act, by many months into the preceding year. Into the coming year. In my view, or in your view, but let me take my view first. I feel it's like correcting an anomaly and then bringing it back from another corner. As a country, if you look at our budgetary system, compare vis-a-vis the revenue the distribution and the allocation of these resources. Do you still think the budgetary system we are adopting at this moment is good for this country? Thank you, Menamini.
The Deputy Senate President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Senator Barrow Jibrin, Abedakano North. Mr. President, Speaker after Speaker, a lot of our distinguished senators that have spoken have spoken about the exploits of this nominee in Lagos. The exploit relating to how the team that was headed by our current president rejuvenated the economy of Lagos to success. Now, as a principal person in that team, one of the most important, critical actors of that thing. Now, I want to know if you are eventually confirmed and you become the Minister of Finance, how are you going to apply the techniques that you use in that period that you serve as Lagos State Commissioner of Finance in bringing about economic prosperity? I know you do that, but we just in summary, because I know it's going to be a full-scale kind of explanation, but summarize. Number two, I know we operate a federal system of government in this country, but how are you going to a kind of draw the attention of our various subnationals to toe the line exactly, just like what you did in Lagos, in the area of revenue generation? Because a lot of our states are suffering from that, to lack of being able to exploit their full potentials in terms of generation. How? Though we operate a federal system, it's not something that is mandatory. But as a Minister of Finance, how are you going to help in bringing them to follow the line that you use in Lagos? Thank you and congratulations.
Leader of the Senate, turn round. Leader of the Senate. Leader of the Senate.
Under Order 8, Sub 3, to move for an extension of time to enable this Senate conclude on all the items on our order paper for today. Thank you.
Leader.
Thank you, President. I rise to second the motion moved by the Leader of the Senate that the Senate should extend the time beyond 2 p.m. to continue with all other items on the order paper for today. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, the motion has been moved and seconded that the Senate do extend the time of sitting beyond 2 p.m. to enable us to conclude the business of the day. Those who are in support of this extension say aye, and those against say nay. The ayes have it. The nominee, most of the people speaking, I can say 90% are saying the same thing, that they are very qualified and they are pouring accolades. I wanted to hear those who have negative things. I have not heard. Okay, so in the absence of any negative thing. I would like you to proceed answers, which if you listen very well, you'll notice that all the questions dovetail into one. How are you going to do what you did in Lagos here so that Nigeria can benefit from you? But mine, I want you to also add, what is your opinion about separating the office of the Accountant General of the Federation and that of Accountant General of federal government? Because you have the consolidated revenue post. Money goes in there for the entirety of the federation, right? Then you also have the federal government account. So when we go to FAC, federal government gets its own share. So the federal government should have Accountant General of Federal Government of Nigeria, who will take care of the percentage that goes to the federal government of Nigeria. Then the entirety of the money that will go into the federation, the consolidated revenue account of the federation, to be shared to the federal government, the states, and local governments. We thought that should also be managed by the Accountant General of the federation. But right now, only one Accountant General for both the federal government of Nigeria and the Accountant General of the federation. So there are times that we are now, sometimes the federal government tends to spend money that really should have been spent by the three-tier of governments. And so the result is that there is it's almost like a unitary expenditure framework. So what will be your view if you are given the portfolio of Minister of Finance? Will you want to have that kind of separation? Because these allo chambers will be very glad to help you in minutes.
Your Excellency, the President of the Senate, distinguished senators, first of all, let me thank so many of the senators that have spoken today for their kind words regarding my own acceptability and suitability. It places a heavy burden of responsibility, but it is a responsibility I will not shirk. It's a challenge I will not back down from. And it's, if given the opportunity, I will do my best to ensure that it is not wasted. Your Excellency, I would like to start where you ended. And I think consistency is very important. In the days when I was in public service at the sub-national level, I did, under our president, then governor of Lagos, advocate that there should be a separation between the Accountant General of the Federation and the Accountant General of the federal government. I would like to reserve the right to review and reaffirm that the situation still remains what it was then, which led to that position being taken. However, I will say this. When we see the kind of difficulty that leads to reconciliation upon reconciliation and disagreement between the fiscal division of resources between the federals and the state, definitely there is need for more resources to ensure that the financial relationship between the federal and states and local governments is kept up to date and constitutional. Having said that, may I now go back to what was a plethora of questions regarding the economy. I do not want to take your time, your distinguished Senator Abiru, and it would be useful to say where we are in terms of economic reform, given that Mr. President having been in office for 2 months, and in that period, I think you will agree with me, he has done a lot. But let me first of all summarize. Much has been said about what happened in Lagos regarding its economic and financial turnaround. In sum, there were 4 things. First of all, there was a commitment to technology. Technology was unsparingly and ruthlessly and robustly used to an increasing efficiency. Secondly, and in the same way, there was total computerizations of the operations of government. In effect, that was civil service reform by another name. Thirdly, there was reliance on the private sector and private investment to drive the economy. And fourth, there was efficient use of the financial markets. Lagos was put in a position financially in terms of its records where he could access the domestic financial markets for long-term financing. That, in a nutshell, what was done in Lagos, and clearly much of it is repeatable at the federal level. As regards the state of the economy, let us remember where we have come from. In 1990, the wealth, the income per capita, the GDP per capita of Nigeria was higher than that of China. As recently as 1990. Today, Chinese per capita income is $13,000 nearly. Nigeria's is just over $2,000. So you can see the gap that has opened up. And the reason why was that production growth was stalled by insecurity, by inflation, and by wasteful government expenditure to a large extent. However, in the last 2 months, there really has been a turnaround in the Nigerian economy, which is room for tremendous optimism. The senator from Ogun, Otumba Benga Daniel, talked about debt. When you look at what has happened with revenue, it is like having a bucket with a hole in it and pouring water in it. The minute you block the hole, the revenue piles up. I'm sure your state governors will tell you that their fiscal situation has turned around, and same with the federal government. It's not quite a question of having so much money that is a question of how do we spend it. But I assure you, there will be a continuous improvement in the fiscal situation at the federal and the state level, and that takes care of the debt situation. Owing is not a bad thing as long as you have the revenue to service. And it was and is the commitment of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to curtail spending, to curtail inefficiencies, and also to stay within the law in terms of borrowing to finance government operations. The subsidy removal and the exchange rate elimination of multiple windows has left us in a very strong position to go forward. However, and it is the concern that Mr. President has been raising, in the time between the several months that it takes for the benefits of economic reform to come through, there is pain. There's substantial economic pain. And that's why the task of government and the commitment of President Tinubu is to ensure that the poorest, the weakest, and the most vulnerable in society are protected through that period. And distinguished senators, it is not just a job for the federal government. The states have their role to play. The corporate sector has its role to play. Individuals have their role to play. The economy has been turned around and put on a positive path by the bold and courageous monetary and fiscal measures of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And what remains is for us to do all we can to support this process so that we stay the course and move this country to the level of a prosperous nation, which is where it rightfully belongs and the people of Nigeria deserve to be. Thank you.
That we unanimously, our nominee, you see that everybody is waiting to ask questions, and so many hands are up, but we can't allow you to answer all the questions in one day, because after your confirmation, if by the Senate, we may need to invite you back so that we can have maybe closed session. So the minority leader, do you have anything you want to say? Please, quickly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my name is Simon Watkon. I'm from Plateau State, and I represent Plateau North. Mr. President, we are all aware that the Nigerian currency is a very weak currency. Very, very weak. And by our monetary policy, I strongly believe that if we allow the Naira to continue to float, it will become more weaker, day in, day out. I want to ask, sir, do you agree that as a monetary policy, Nigeria should have a benchmark for the exchange rate of the Naira with the dollar? And I think you will give us a very good answer. Thank you.
Distinguished Senator, distinguished Chief Whip, just 1 minute question, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Our nominee, mine is not a question but a reminder. Reminder because you are in charge of the monetary policies and we know the role you can play, plus the fact that you are a politician. The recurrent expenditure in this country, if you look at their statistics, in 2018 was 3.5 trillion. It's now 8.2 trillion. No employment, no promotion, but yet the cost is escalating. Secondly, our rate of debt servicing, which I believe you know. For the first time around, almost 90 or 95% of our income is going into debt servicing. And that is because of the borrowing. Number three, our savings from the removal of the oil subsidy, as mentioned by Mr. President yesterday, was up to 1 trillion. And my confusion is, we are saving 1 trillion, and we here approved borrowing of $800 million, and also approved a supplementary budget of 500 billion for the palliatives. I'm glad Mr. President reversed and took another look at the modalities given by the World Bank. That is to share 8,000 per month and all that. Mr. President has done the right thing by looking at that again. And also, you know that our foreign reserve, for the first time again, is going into negative. I don't know the specific amount, but we are in negative. And also, the exchange rate, as it is now, is 867 or so, and it's moving on. And you know, with our current situation,
the more the foreign exchange moves up, the more the prices of the product will. You are a politician and you are an expert. And for me, personally, my expectation is so high. Just a reminder. Lastly, when people get opportunity like this, we that have so much expectation, and suddenly they change into something else. They close their doors. They don't want to listen to the representative of the people. They don't want to get ideas, and they say they are experts. And nothing is working under the experts. We have that experience. Please, the expectation is high on you and this government. When you get there, your doors should be open, and you should listen, and also take measures, immediate one, on this exchange rate, and then the palliatives that the government is planning. We should see it. Lastly, sir, please don't share this money. Let it be shared among the people. I mean the savings. We have 1 trillion. If we are to share it, let's calculate Nigerians or divide it by 774 local government and let it get down. Not to share it among some people that will also go and mismanage it again. That's my advice.
Distinguished Senate Leader.
Well, Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, so much has been said, and I believe there is a reason for such. One, it is generally suspected that Mr. Wale Edun might be heading a very sensitive ministry. So I can understand. His background also attests to the fact that the seriousness of an assignment that might be given to him is such that as elected representatives of the people, we should be concerned. Mine, Mr. President, is to make a very short comment and to ask only one question. My comment will have to do also with the fact that Mr. Wale Edun is well and favorably known to me. I was also privileged to have served in the same cabinet with him under His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu as Governor of Lagos State, where I was privileged to have served the government and people of Lagos State for 11.5 years under 2 governors. What I want to attest to on my own part is his strength of character and the fact that he's a motivator. I recall with a very high sense of nostalgia how Mr. Wale Edun will motivate and energize other members of cabinet in very difficult situations, and how he believed sincerely that there was a solution to every challenge, to every problem. And I think having someone like him in the cabinet of the Federal Republic of Nigeria at a time like this will be a major plus for our country. Number 2, I also want to attest to the fact that he's one person who can stand his ground. He was not a yes man in that cabinet. And he was somebody who saw his service in public service only as a temporary thing. At every point, he carried himself like a professional. And he always believed he had an alternative address. So he wasn't somebody who would just take anything. Why am I saying this? It's because where we are right now, we need a minister in charge of our finance who will be able to stand his ground. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, part of the problem of our economy in the last decade was that we had ministers of finance who were not able to stand their ground to draw a line of demarcation between monetary policies and fiscal policies, regardless of how a governor of central bank is, the Minister of Finance is the #1 person in charge of the economy. And he must be able to stand his ground. He must be able to insist on a line of demarcation being drawn between monetary policy and fiscal policy. Not a situation where the central bank will intervene in everything and you will not even know where the mandate of the central bank starts and where it ends. So, if I will ask him any question today, my question will be, Mr. Wale Edun, in the event, by the grace of God, that you are screened and confirmed by this Senate, and in the event that you are posted by Mr. President to the Ministry of Finance, how would you ensure that our fiscal policies are clearly demarcated from our monetary policies so that we don't continue to have this challenge in our economy? Thank you, Mr. President.
Finally, let us listen to our Senate President Emeritus, distinguished Senator Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues, I'm Ahmed Ibrahim Lon, I represent Yobe North. Mr. Nominee, Mr. Wale Edun, congratulations for the nomination. And your name and reputation precedes you. I've never met you physically, but I've heard your name so many times over the years as someone who makes positive difference anytime you are given an assignment. Distinguished colleagues, you will recall that we have passed the amendment to the supplementary budget of 500 billion, approved $800 million, and of course recently a saving of about 1 trillion naira was made by the federal government. And the idea is to give money, maybe share money, 8,000 to some of our citizens who are so disadvantaged. My problem is, and that is where my question is coming from, those who are so disadvantaged, those that are so vulnerable in our country, are those that are in rural areas mostly, and of course we have few in urban centers, and those are not people with bank accounts. The financial inclusion apparently is not sufficient. And if we have to give monies to these vulnerable people who are really deserving of the share, how would you achieve that? You cannot go to villages or market squares and start giving cash. If you have to make transfer, they have no accounts. You will end up giving the money to those that do not deserve the money. So how do we intend to achieve this first assignment of giving Nigerians, those that are so vulnerable, those that are so poor, that need the attention and support of governments, not only the federal government, but especially the federal government, when they have no accounts, and yet we are saying we should share the money? I believe that we have an answer to this, because it's going to be our first test. We have to get this distribution properly done, because Nigerians need this, almost everyone, but there are those that need it most, and those that need it most have no bank accounts. So I want you specifically to respond to this, because it's something that we should address, and address very soon before we start distributing the money. Whether it is national register or state registers, the people remain without bank accounts. How do you give them this money? Thank you very much.
Because I want just jot down these two sections. I want you to jot down what I'm going to tell you. Section 80 of the Nigerian Constitution. Section 83 says, no monies shall be withdrawn from any public fund of the Federation other than the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation, unless the issue of those monies has been authorized by an act of the National Assembly. You got it? Section 80 sub 4 says, no money shall be withdrawn from the Consolidated Revenue Fund or any other public fund of the Federation, except in the manner prescribed by the National Assembly. You got it? In the past, these things were observed in bridges, and that is why a lot of reconciliations are taking place now to see how monies can be refunded and shared back to states and local governments. So, God giving you the opportunity, we just want you to comply with the constitutional provisions. And you can commit to this chamber that if so granted the privilege, that you will do so. Then Senator Goje also said that his question that touched on power was not well answered. It will look as if you are answering all the questions that pertain to government. It's because of the confidence that this chamber seems to repose in you. And that also reflects the feelings of Nigerians that you are coming to make a difference. So you can answer all now, and thereafter you take a bow.
Your Excellency, distinguished senators, thank you very much. Senator Goje beat me to it. I was noting that that question on power was one that I had not addressed. And my response is this: there has been liberalization of the electricity sector, and it's done in order to allow investment in all aspects of the value chain. And I think it is that liberalization that will unleash investment in the sector, expertise in the sector, and decentralization of the once very, very monolithic, I would say, the once very monolithic power sector. So His Excellency beat me to it, but I was going to come back and reply you that we should look to the new dispensation in the electricity sector to bring the solutions that we seek. May I try and maybe respect a protocol by moving to the question of His Excellency, the former President of the Senate, who talked very, very emotionally, I might even say, about this issue of giving direct payments to poor people. Distinguished Senator, India would achieve what we are trying to achieve and what is giving us so much difficulty in a jiffy. A digital identity for virtually every man, woman, and child in India is what they have achieved, is what is recommended for us. It is what the telecoms companies that have visited Mr. President have promised to assist him with. Senator Abiru had mentioned that I am a member of the party right from the grassroots and have been so for decades. On that basis, I am loath to talk about the $800 million $800 million World Bank loan. It has proved so unpopular, has been spoken of in such derogatory terms that I think is not something that I would like to bring up or comment on at this stage, other than to say it's probably important to find a way not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And Senator Lawan, I know that the provision and the conditions surrounding that financing by the World Bank is that every recipient should have a biometric verification. Otherwise, they would not be eligible for that funding. So it's a catch-22. Clearly, there's a register that does have biometric validation to an extent. But as you say, sir, we need to do more to reach people outside of the formal financial system, and that, I'm sure, is a goal of this government. On the 500 billion naira supplementary budget, I think that is an appropriated sum. It was an appropriated sum, and therefore it was part of the current budget. Foreign exchange, Center from Plateau. The issue of foreign exchange is clearly uppermost in the minds of the monetary authorities. What I can say is this: for a country that has revenue flows from oil revenues, from remittances, from other non-oil exports, and from financing of over $100 billion a year, there is no reason that there should not be a stable exchange rate, all other things being equal, and provided inflation is kept under control. The 860 or so that we are seeing is not backed up by the fundamentals of the Nigerian economy. The rate, when you move aside speculation and the fact that there is, as a result of the foreign exchange management practices of the past, the inefficiencies and the corruption involved, has meant that there is an overhang. There is an overhang of unpaid dollar bills, and that is what is putting pressure on the exchange rate, and that is what night and day the monetary authorities and the monetary team of Mr. President is looking to resolve by raising revenue, by looking at other sources of investment funding, by attracting investment funds, equity funds, not debt, from those around the world interested in investing in the Nigerian economy. Let us remember, it is not quite 2 weeks that Turkey, that is by no means a darling of the Bretton Woods institutions, World Bank, IMF, and so forth, in terms of its monetary policies and its economic management. Turkey attracted $50 billion in investment funding of projects in that country from UAE. It is in such directions that the solution to the overhang, to the shortage of liquidity in the foreign exchange market is being sought. The whole gamut, including increases in oil production as a result of greater security. It is difficult to predict because the markets, the capital markets, take on a psychology of their own. But I would just like to warn that all the models are showing that the fundamental value of the Naira should be somewhere around 700. So therefore, a note of caution to the speculators. As liquidity flows in and the rate comes rapidly down, there's a chance that they could lose their shirts. It's just a warning. Your Excellency, you did raise the issue of the Consolidated Revenue Fund. You did raise the issue of adherence to the Constitution. His Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is a Democrat. He's someone that believes in federalism. He believes in true fiscal federalism. He believes in the rule of law. And so it is my belief that he would not countenance or knowingly spend or authorize to be spent funds that have not been duly appropriated by this august body and others who are so authorized to do. Thank you.
Mike. I can imagine that you can't wait to go. Take a bow. Thank you. On the other side, thank you for the elucidation on a lot of issues. The Senate leader.
You've been watching the Senate screening of ministerial nominees chosen by President Bola Tinubu for confirmation. This follows the screening of 14 other nominees yesterday. The 14 nominees listed for screening today are David Umahi of Ebonyi State, who was asked to take a bow and go, and Adebayo Lawali Edun of Ogun State, whose character was overwhelmingly affirmed even while being grilled intensely. Others set for screening include Nasir el-Rufai of Kaduna State, Ahmed Musa Dangiwa, Katsina State, Chief Uche Jeffrey Naji, Enugu State, Stella Okutete Delta, and Delia Lake of Ekiti State, among others.
The nominee before us is well known to all of us. So, Your Excellency, you are welcome. You may wish to add a few, just a kind of summarized version of your resume. and then thereafter take questions from the distinguished senators. The floor is yours.
Your Excellency, Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, my name is Nasir Ahmed el-Rufai. I am standing before you as a result of being nominated to be a minister of the government of the Federation. I was born about 63 years ago in Daudawa, a village in Katsina State, and I attended primary school in Daudawa and Kao, Kaduna, then went to Barewa College between 1972 and 1976. Completed the West African School Certificate and went to Ahmed University, where I graduated in 1980 with a degree in quantity surveying. 2 years later, I went back to school to get a master's in business administration from the same university, Ahmed University Zaria. And a year later, completed a postgraduate diploma in computer science. Subsequently, in years ahead, I got a law degree from the University of London and NLB from University of London, a master's in public administration from Harvard University Kennedy School of Government. I started my business as a consulting quantity surveyor in 1981 after completing my youth service in Ogun State, and I served in Abeokuta with a company called George Wimpy Nigeria Limited, then building the Oyan River Dam. I worked for a few months, the construction company building the ABU Teaching Hospital before establishing the quantity surveying consulting firm, el-Rufai and Partners. The firm still exists. It's one of the largest quantity surveying firms in the country. It's being run by my partners. I left the firm since 1998 when I was asked by General Abdul Salam Abubakar to be one of his policy advisors after the death of General Sani Abacha. During the handover to President-elect Obasanjo, the President-elect promised me that he would want to invite me to work with him when he takes over, and he did. I was appointed the Director General of the Bureau of Public Enterprises, where I was tasked to kickstart the federal government privatization program, which had been suspended since 1993. During that period, for the next 4 years from 1999, I was in charge of the program. And it was during this period that we privatized most of the banks, commercial banks, cement, sugar companies, vehicle assembly plants. And we also designed and steered the reforms in key sectors like telecommunications, which turned out to be quite successful. We also started reforms in the electricity supply industry and oil and gas. In fact, the first draft of what turned out to be the Petroleum Industry Act was drafted by the BPE when I was in charge. Some of the distinguished senators here were either in the House of Representatives or in the executive branch, like distinguished Senator Goje, who was Minister of State for Power. We all worked together to steer these reforms ahead. I was then appointed Minister of the Federal Capital Territory after confirmation by the Senate. So this is the second time I'm coming back to these distinguished chambers. The first time was 20 years ago, in 2003.
when I was confirmed and appointed Minister of the Federal Capital Territory. I administered Abuja for 4 years, and thereafter I went back to school. That's when I acquired my law degree and my MPA from Kennedy School of Government. I came back to Nigeria after a short period of exile in May 2010 and joined the CPC under the leadership of General Muhammadu Buhari. Eventually, the CPC, of course, merged with other parties to form the APC. And I'm proud to say that I'm one of the founding members of the APC. I'm one of the 37 first set of officers that signed and filled the INEC form that got the All Progressive Congress registered. And I've remained a member since then. In 2015, I was elected the governor of Kaduna State and re-elected in 2019. Your Excellencies, this is a short summary of my life, my education experience, private sector and public service career. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Yari. Oh, okay. After you, then the Senator for Kaduna, 3 of them.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Abdulaziz Abubakar Yari, I represent good people of Zamfara West. Mr. President of the Senate, I'm from Zamfara State. My distinguished colleagues, nominee, I have just 3 questions. Number 1, if you are confirmed by the Senate and eventually Mr. President see you deem fit to assign you in the energy sector of power, understanding the serious situation of our energy situation and the power situation in Nigeria, what do you intend to do to improve the generation and distribution line? Sometime in 2016-17, federal government planned to increase generation to 7,000. So our situation, even if we have 7,000 megawatt, we don't have a distribution line to carry it all over Nigeria. 7,000. So if you are, Mr. President give you a portfolio in the power sector, what do you intend to do to balance between what we are going to have as increment towards the reserve knowledge in the issue of generation and distribution? That's number 1. Number 2, you and I, we have the same opinion when we are there, and I believe you know what I'm talking about, that on the issue of privatization of discourse, we have some opinion. If you get there, how do you want to intervene between the receipt, the outflow and inflow of generation and the book balances in the issue of payment? Because we are a kind of in double jeopardy. At any point in time, we are
out of subsidy of oil. But I'm happy that I had sometime in January or February this year, the federal government back out in the issue of paying subsidy to energy. So how do you intend to balance that? Because the generation, when it's sent to disco, the generation don't lose their money in any way. They go straight to get their funds from the guarantee given by the federal government instead of guarantee given by the discourse. That's number two. The last one, Mr. President, the nominee is still on the discourse. We knew that the global practice, water, power is not a social kind of program given just for free. But in Nigeria, reverse is the case. We are looking at it as a social services, which is not. So this discourse in place where I and you in those days, we have done a lot of work as a part of our responsibility in governance to improve the supply. But for them to take even a clerk who will be collecting funds for them to remit back to the generation, they are not doing it. And we know it can go on ultimatum that no need for any other person. As we're doing our phone, we're taking our phone in the house, you meet about 6 people with the telephone site. A minimum of at least 5,000, 6,000 per set. And also we recharge every week at least 300, 1,000. So if we put the whole family, that they're having their meters, what do you intend to impose this discourse to put automatic a kind of a plan whereby your own people, public of Nigeria, will be shortchanged on giving established bills instead of going pay as you earn. You get the service, you pay. As we are paying our phone, we pay service and we get access to service. So what do you intend to do on this? Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Khalil.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. My name is Ibrahim Khalid. I represent Kaduna North. I am from Kaduna State. Let me start by congratulating the nominee for his nomination as a Minister of the Federal Republic. I wish to further inform this Senate that the resolve of the 3 senators from Kaduna State, in consultation with the people of Kaduna State from across the political divide, have resolved and agreed that we should support the nomination of this very important nominee. Furthermore, the nominee is from Kaduna State, an bona fide indigenous of Kaduna State. Secondly, he appeared before these hallowed chambers sometimes in 2003, and he was screened and cleared. And precisely, he is a person that is well known nationally and internationally. He has the capacity to continue with the good deed he's been doing while he was a minister. In this regard, I want to urge the Senate to consider this, and also, based on the established precedents that was established yesterday, in respect of his colleagues, the 2 governors who came and appeared before us, nobody asked them questions. Because of their pedigree, they were asked to take a bow and go. We therefore, I urge the Senate, even with the questions that was asked, that the Senate do ask the nominee to take a bow and go. We know him, we know he's capable. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Karimi.
This man. Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Karimi Sunday. I represent Kogi West. My Excellency, Governor Nasir el-Rufai,
your performance in any office you find yourself in this country has been outstanding. In BPE, your record is there. In FCT as a minister, your record is there. And as two-time governor of Kaduna State, you did well. But I have a very strong petition against you that borders on security, unity, and cohesiveness of Nigerian nation. And I think that petition has to be considered along in this screening exercise.
Senator Musa.
And he is not different from any other one that have also performed in other places. There were two governors that have been here for screening, and there was a precedent, and that precedent as a convention in chambers like this must be sustained. And as such, I want to propose that Nasir el-Rufai should take his bow and go. And then all other things can be determined when we come to the confirmation stage. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Dangiwa Goji. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. As said by previous speakers, Nasir el-Rufai is well known to all of us, Nigerians, and in fact to the international community. And as agreed by all of us, he has done very well in all the offices occupied, from DG BPE to FCT Minister and two-time Governor of Kaduna State. I had a question before, but given the President said by this Senate yesterday regarding the two other governors who were asked to take a bow and go, I want to join my colleagues to insist and to request that he should take a bow and go. Take the stand. Yeah? Take a bow.
Thank you very much. Order, please. I think we have gotten enough questions. We'll avail him the opportunity to respond. When he responds, then we can allow you to go back and go. Yes. And Karimi, you came forward with, I don't know whether you follow the normal something, but order, please. Order, please. Whatever is the case, this is an opportunity for nominees to explain, to showcase themselves. Then later we'll come to the confirmation approval. So, Mr. Nominee, you can please answer the questions so that and then you bow and go.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Senate President. I want to first thank the distinguished senators for the very warm remarks made on my person and on my public service record. I want to convey my gratitude to the Senate for this recognition. My brother, the distinguished senator from Zamfara State and our former chairman of the Governors Forum, asked 3 questions, all centered around the electricity supply industry. I will take them together because they are all connected. My brother asked about how do we ramp up generation and distribution. What do we do about the privatized discourse and the issues of subsidies and illiquidity around them, and the various guarantees that have so far costed the government more than 1.6 trillion after privatization. Your Excellencies, the electricity supply situation in Nigeria has defied every government for 60 years. It has defied every president. President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is committed to ensuring that Nigeria has stable and reliable electricity supply. Because without electricity, industrialization is a pipe dream. Without electricity, even agriculture today is not a viable proposition. So he's committed to that, and he has asked me to work with him to address these problems. And I will do my best to do so. Your Excellencies, right now Nigeria has about 13,000 megawatts of installed generation capacity, but we hardly do more than 4,000 or 5,000 megawatts. So to improve generation, the first order of business is to look at what is constraining the full production of electricity from these 13,000 megawatts. Why do we have 13,000 installed and only 4,000 or 5,000 being produced? Many of the generation stations cannot produce because of poor supply of gas. 80% of our generation is from gas, and the balance is hydro. The gas-fired stations often don't have supply of gas. There are power stations that have been completed 2 or 3 years ago, and they have produced nothing because there is no gas supply. So that's another thing that must be addressed. We must ensure that gas and power are together under one roof for this issue of gas supply, which has persisted for over 20 years, to be resolved. But Your Excellency, even if we are able to generate 13,000 megawatts today, our transmission infrastructure can only do 5,000, maybe 6,000 at best. So the second major constraint to electricity supply in Nigeria is the transmission infrastructure. We need to close the loop in our transmission system so that the 13 system collapses we had in 2022 are not repeated again in our history. And this can be done. There is money to expand the transmission infrastructure. We just need to organize ourselves, remove politics from transmission procurement, and focus on improving our transmission infrastructure. The third problem is distribution. In 2013, we privatized our distribution companies, 11 of them, 60% to the private sector, 40% to be held by government. The idea is that the 40% is supposed to be listed on the stock exchange so that every Nigerian will be a shareholder in these companies. But that has not happened. 10 years after privatization, the government is still, in one way or the other, subsidizing electricity. As I said, the last time we checked, it was about 1.6 trillion in a privatized environment. This is unsustainable and unacceptable. But what do we do with the distribution companies? They have been privatized. About 5 or 6 of them are under receivership because those that bought the companies borrowed from banks and have not been paying the banks. So the banks have taken over 5 or 6 of them. And the last time we did a stress test on the distribution companies, only about 3 of them out of 11 are doing well. So there is a lot of work to be done regarding distribution, because distribution is the last end of the electricity supply chain. If it does not work, if they don't collect money, if they don't have enough metering, then they will not be able to pay for power supplied by the generation companies. And when they are unable to pay, the gap is what the government now pays. Otherwise, they will invoke the partial risk guarantee posted by the federal government of Nigeria. So this is a major problem and has to be addressed. But in the short term, the liquidity situation in the electricity supply industry has to be looked at. Tariffs must be cost reflective, and even the ownership of these distribution companies may have to change, because right now the banks own about 6 of them. They control 60% of the shares, and banks are not good at running companies. They are good at taking out whatever they need to recover their loan. So we intend, if given the opportunity, to sit and work out a system in which perhaps we'll be able to attract fresh capital, fresh new investors with technical and financial capacity into the distribution chain so that it can be expanded. The opportunity to do so exists because 6, as I said, out of the 11 are in receivership. 3 are doing okay. The others are 50-50. But a holistic approach is needed. And Your Excellencies, this is a problem that requires the support of everyone. It's not just Mr. President who will lead from the front, but also the National Assembly. Certain amendments to the Electricity Act 2023 may be needed. Certain amendments to the Petroleum Industry Act 2021 may be needed to bring this sector to align so that we provide Nigerians stable and reliable electricity. The President's vision is that within 7 years, we will not have power outages in this country. The President is saddened by the fact that countries like Benin Republic, Cameroon, Niger, our neighbors that are smaller countries, have reliable electricity. You don't see power cuts in these countries yet. With all our resources and our capabilities and the quality of people we have as a nation, we are unable to provide electricity to our households and our businesses. And he's committed to working with everyone to ensure that this happens. And I urge the National Assembly to be a partner to make this happen. There are many parts of Nigeria that are not covered by the grid. The new Electricity Act provides the states with greater involvement now in the electricity supply industry. And what is happening in the world provides an opportunity for Nigeria to attract a lot of resources into the renewable energy sector, utilizing solar, wind, and even nuclear. And we are not ruling out using our coal reserves to establish power stations that will constitute the base load for the stability of the power system. So all options will be looked at. Metering is a big issue. A lot of progress has been made by some of the distribution companies in the last 3 or 4 years with the support of the Central Bank and the World Bank. And every house should be metered. Every household, every business should be metered. Estimated billing is not acceptable. But in addition, Your Excellency, distinguished senators, Nigeria must take a hard stance against those that steal electricity, those that get electricity by diverting cables and not paying. We must take a hardline stance if this sector is to work. A lot of advocacy is necessary because, as the distinguished senator correctly pointed out, people believe that water and electricity should be free. They are social services. They are not. They cost money to produce. The least you can do is to pay back for the cost of production. And if you hand it to the private sector needs a return on its investment over and above the cost of production. This was the intention of the Electric Power Sector Reform Act of 2005, which this National Assembly enacted, and it is continued in the Electric Power Sector Reform Act of 2023. I hope, Your Excellency, I have responded to all your questions. Distinguished Senate President, I would like to say one or two words before I leave. About a petition against me.
Distinguished colleagues, perhaps I should inform you that I've received petitions from many other people in respect of other nominees. But this is not where we are to deal with petitions. Our job here is to screen. And then, of course, we can refer petitions to where petitions will be dealt with. These are the nominees of Mr. President. If it is something that is a formal petition before the Senate, we will look at it formally. But there are certain petitions we have to refer back to either the presidency or security agencies to look at. And that has nothing to do with us. So I think by the time we are going into the issue of confirmation and approval, we will be so advised. So I will want to plead with my brother to take a bow. Take a bow. So don't bother about. Thank you. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Kumar, next person. Distinguished colleagues, if anybody has a petition against any nominee, please just drop it with me or drop it with the leader of the Senate. These are not our nominees. These are presidential nominees. And then, accompanying each nominee should actually be security report, which is not for the consumption of the public. And we cannot use a public forum like this to ask people to constitute ourselves into a court and start asking questions about petitions. But if the petitions are substantial, we'll refer it to the appropriate authorities and then we'll be so advised. Yes, we'll refer it to the nominating agencies and the noted the petitions.
And you are still tuned in to Newsday on the Arise News channel, and you've been watching the Senate screening of ministerial nominees chosen by President Bola Tinubu for confirmation. Now, this follows the screening of 14 other nominees yesterday. Those included for screening today are Dave Umahi of Ebonyi State. Earlier, he was asked to take a bow and go. Adebayo Olawale Edun of Ogun State was also screened. He was overwhelmingly affirmed. Nasir el-Rufai just finished getting screened. He's from Kaduna State. Grilled intensely. Let's listen up for more screenings. Now,
on the Arise News channel.
For this exalted position. If just use a few minutes to summarize your resume, and then distinguished colleagues may wish to ask you a few questions, but if there is no question, you will take a bow. Thank you.
Distinguished President of the Senate, Your Excellency, distinguished Deputy President of the Senate, the esteemed senators, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am architect Ahmed Musa Dangiwa from Katsina State. I was born in Katsina State 60 years ago. I've had privilege of attending my primary schools in Katsina, secondary school in Kaduna, Sadana Memorial College. From there, I proceeded to Katsina College of Arts, Science and Technology, Zaria, for my IJMB. From there, I proceeded to ABU Zaria for my master's degree in architecture, and also I acquired master's degree in business administration, all in ABU Zaria, apart from the BSc also in architecture. I did my NYC in Cross River State in 1987 to 88. From there, I got a job in Katsina State after its creation. I stayed there for just 2 months in Katsina before I proceeded to Kaduna to practice architecture in an architectural firm. I worked for 6 years where I rose from pupil architect to senior architect. From there, I ventured into mortgage banking in Sahel Mortgage Bank in Kaduna. I decided to opt out and form my own architectural firm and construction company, AM Design Consults and Jalo International Nigeria Limited. I practiced for 30 years before Mr. President appointed me to head the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria from 2017 to 2022. Currently, I am the Secretary to the State Government of Katsina State, thanks to my Governor, Dr. Duko Omarada, who appointed me 2 months ago. In Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, I did my best to ensure that we surpass all corporate indices of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. What we did, we increased contributions to the NHF, the National Housing Fund, which is the major source of funding that scheme. Within 5 years of my tenure in FMBN, I was able to generate 279 billion naira within 5 years, to which the bank could only generate 232 billion in 25 years. We were able to do that through engagement with the major stakeholders, the state governors, the labor centers, and ensure that even the informal sector were reached out to be contributors into the fund. With this funding of 279 billion within 5 years, we were able to generate a lot of mortgages for Nigerians. We disbursed over 175 billion naira as mortgages within that 5 years. We liberalize access to mortgage. We ensure that the mortgages are affordable and accessible by Nigerians. We created over 6,000 NHF mortgages and 77,575 microfinance, which is the home renovation loans. In the few years we have done, in the 5 years, we optimized our operations. We increased these NHF refunds, because when a worker retired from work, he needs to contribute. He needs to be refunded what he has contributed. I refunded over 40 billion naira to those retirees, to which the bank only refunded 10 billion naira within the 25 years of its existence. I'm also privileged to launch the 40 billion naira FMBN Mega Cities project. It's a project where we created livable communities where we have over 1,000 houses in one cluster. I was able to build 1,250 houses within that cluster before I left FMBN. Additionally, due to our dynamic leadership and reform-oriented management, which I headed, FMBN also ensure that we ensure that there is much access to mortgages by Nigerians. We reduce the equity contributions of Nigerians, which is the major constraints for accessing the mortgage. Before a Nigerian worker accesses a mortgage, he has to pay 30% of that, of any amount above 10 million naira. We reduce it to only 5%. We ensure that mortgages below 5 million are at zero equity. We created other avenues of accessing it, because even with the 5% for a loan below 5 million naira, some Nigerians could not access it. So we created the rent to own, whereby a contributor can go into the house as a tenant. He pays his rent, and that becomes a contribution towards paying the house. We ensure that we created the diaspora mortgage loans for even those living outside the country. So these are some of the things we did. We were able to achieve that through the FMBM. We ensure that we engage the services of KPMG, which is a company that will be able to develop a 5-year strategic development for us. The time I was leaving FMBN, I left 120 billion naira in the coffers of the bank after all this project we have done. Thank you, sir.
You want him to, he has finished. You want him to, okay. Let me start from this side. The civil senator, Alero.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting in the chair, my distinguished colleagues. Mohammed Adam Alero is my name. I represent KB Central. Let me start by congratulating the nominee for being nominated as Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, if confirmed by the Senate. I have a very simple question for you. I listened attentively to your list of achievements as stated here in this profile. I agree with you that a lot has been achieved, but right now we have about 15 million house deficit in the country, and there is no way we can fill in this deficit unless concerted effort is being made. With your experience, what do you think can be done in order to meet this 15 million housing deficit in the country? You have reduced equity contribution by about 5% from 30%, which is very good. But still, people that are living in rural areas, they need housing. And it is the policy of this government to provide housing to everybody as enshrined in the 1999 Constitution. What do you think can be done in order to meet this constitutional requirement? Thank you very much, Mr. President.
The Chief Senator, Dangiwa.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Ibrahim Dangiwa, representing Gombe North. Let me start by congratulating the nominee. The nominee is a person I happen to have met in the course of my being the governor of Gombe State. I met him when we had issues of housing and he was going around. I would want to say that at that time he assisted Gombe and we did 3 schemes totaling about 120 housing units, and we agreed to continue in that order. But some of the problems of the housing estates that were constructed in those days were the issues of how people could afford them. Very good scheme, but the purchasing power of the people is very low. So if you are given opportunity to be in charge of housing again at a higher level, how do you replicate this all across the nation to address the issues of the housing deficit? And 2, how do you make them much more affordable to our people? Because you can build the houses and they will be there and our people will not be able to afford them. I congratulate him. I know him right from ABU. He's a good man. He's a good material for this country.
Distinguished Senator Danduse.
Thank you, Mr. President. As a chair, I'm Danduse Muntaru Mohammed, representing Katsina South. I want to sincerely congratulate Mr. President and the nominee for nominating this humble and most responsible man we have in Katsina State. Because in political history of Katsina State, if you look at it critically, he has performed wonderfully, going by the antecedents of what is in this bio data of his commitment. And also, being the MD of Federal Mortgage Bank, he is always listening to the will and aspiration of National Assembly, because I am part of the Committee of Housing and Mortgage, and I know how he waited patiently for our chairman for more than 6 hours in the National Assembly, and he is timely, and he is the first person in Katsina State, despite the fact of the situation we have in APC, to congratulate the current governor and also become the DG campaign of the APC. And considering the fact of what he has done in Federal Mortgage Bank, I believe is timely, and his nomination will give way to solve most of the problems that still remain in that regard. So I want to urge my respected colleagues to consider him and take a vote and go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Distinguished Senator Yaradua.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sitting as chair. My name is Abdulaziz Musa Eradua. I'm representing the good people of Katsina Central. I'm from Katsina State. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, before you is Architect Ahmed Dangiwa, an accomplished architect by profession, an astute politician. And you have heard what my colleague has mentioned. In fact, he was an interim chairman during the formation of All Progressive Congress. Aside from that, the nominee has contested as a senator, and also he was a gubernatorial candidate. In fact, he was a DG campaign not only of our amiable governor, but he was the DG campaign of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu in Katsina State. Mr. President, our distinguished colleagues, I believe he will be an asset to the cabinet of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He is one man who has had a stellar career as an architect, even before thinking of going into politics. We expect him to provide solutions-driven policies and agenda in whatever ministry he is assigned to. The people of Katsina State are proud of this nomination. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, you will agree with me that the President has picked a sound man for the job of a minister. And as a former director of Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, you can see from his profile his achievements. And what interests me more in this achievement is his ability to develop a 5-year strategy plan for Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. The plan has aimed to deliver 100,000 housing units annually, and he has been able to grow the annual collection from 50 billion to 300 billion in that strategic plan. He has also expanded the customer base, targeting especially over 31 million informal contributors from the informal sector. Architect Ahmed Dangiwa's virtues of strategic leadership, financial acumen, and a people-centered approach, combined with his notable accomplishments, have undoubtedly made a substantial impact on the housing sector in Nigeria. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I want to implore us to please give him a clean bill of lading, because he has all it takes to drive policies for the benefit of this country. Thank you, Mr. President. Inshallah.
Distinguished Senator Zangodara.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I'm Nasir Zangodara, representing Katsina North. I'm from Katsina State. Mr. President, the gentleman you see on the podium has been introduced by my other colleagues, is Architect Ahmed Musa Dangiwa. I just want to go over certain areas that I think we need to broaden the scope of what should have been said about him, even though his CV speaks volumes about his professional ethics, his hard work, and also the fact that he is a team player. And I would not be wrong in saying that even Mr. President saw that value in him to nominate him as a minister of the Federal Republic. Mr. President, Architect Ahmed Musa Dangiwa contested the governorship of Katsina State under the platform of the APC. Unfortunately, Allah did not grant him victory, but that only further emboldened him to accept the defeat, work on behalf of his party by becoming the DG campaign of the Tinubu Dikwarada Campaign Organization or Campaign Council in Katsina State. Mr. President, APC was able, through the leadership of Architect Ahmed Dangiwa, was able to win the 3 senatorial seats in Katsina State and 9 out of the 15 seats in the House of Representatives, as well as 33 out of 34 seats in the State House of Assembly. I think without much further ado, a lot has been said about this gentleman, and I crave the indulgence of Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues to simply ask the nominee to take a bow and go. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator, let's put it this way. There is really nobody opposed to the nominee. So I will just, maybe from the southeast of Nigeria, just Senator Izunaso, you've been lifting your hand. Is there anything you want to add that the people from Katsina have not added? Or is Southeast ready to add something? So that we don't marginalize Southeast. And then Northwest has spoken. Southwest made the nomination. So Southeast is going to say something. Maybe North Central may add a voice.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Now that Southeast is no longer marginalized, I may have to say a few words. My name is Senator Osidis Nassau. I represent Imo West. Mr. President, let me congratulate the nominee for the wonderful job we have done at the Federal Mortgage Bank. But I have just one or two questions. In Federal Mortgage Bank, within 5 years, you were able to lift the revenue generation of NHF from 232 billion that it has in 25 years. You were able to jack it up to 279, making it an average of about 55 billion per annum. That 50 million per annum, that is a good feat. But my question is, NHF has been around for the past 25 years. The paltry sum of 2.5% that contributors make, do you think it will be able to enable somebody to own an affordable house in Nigeria? Based on the housing deficit of about 28 million housing deficit in Nigeria since 2022, we have 28 million housing deficit. Do you think that this paltry sum will be able to solve the issues of housing in Nigeria? That's question number one. Number two, is NHF still relevant? If it is relevant, what are we going to do to make it more robust? Finally, I want to look at the issue of mortgage securitarization that is practiced all over the world. How come you haven't thought of it? A situation where we can pool assets together to be able to enable us access interest on housing across the Federation. Don't you think that will enable us to access it better than the way we're doing it now? Thank you.
North Central, Senator Kwashiki.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my very distinguished colleagues, I wasn't ready to speak. You just called me unexpected, Mr. Chairman. Well, Mr. Chairman, my very distinguished colleagues, I am Senator Akwashiki Godia, represent Nasarawa North Senatorial District. Yes, Mr. Minister nominee, let me use this opportunity to align myself with your brothers from Katsina, that you are a very good man, you are a nice man. And looking at your track records by the CV, you have turned around things in the Federal Mortgage Bank. And I want to believe if eventually this Senate find you worthy and confirmed you by the request of Mr. President, and I want to believe you will make things happen in the sector they will send you to. I can see from the explanation of my colleagues from your own state, both of them, the three of them, President serving Secretary to the state government, and I want to believe you're a man of integrity, and I want to request that you speak in favor of peace, in favor of justice, sincerity of purpose, to make things work again in our fatherland, the country of our Nigeria. I want to congratulate you for this opportunity, and I wish you well by the time the Senate found you worthy and confirmed you as the Honorable Minister of the Federal Republic. Thank you very much.
From the housing sector in South-South, Senator Benson Kobewe.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Senator Kombowe Friday Benson, representing Bayelsa Central. Your Excellency, sir, I just want to ask a simple question to the nominee. Looking at his tax clearance certificate, where it reads 2020, 2021, and 2022 tax payment. What is obtainable elsewhere, and usually what we do, is that taxes are paid as at when due. And at the bottom of every tax receipt, there is a date. And that date is always reflected at the end of the tax certificate. But here, all the 3 tax payment years are bearing one particular date. That goes to mean that he was not a taxpayer. And let him explain how he would have gotten to this point of paying all the 3 years' taxes in just on the 28th of this month, 2023. Just last month, sorry, sir. On the 28th of last month, July, was when he paid all the 3 taxes. And the mortgage bank, Guru Maharaji, so to say, one that has all the experience, why will he only come here to tell us he paid all the taxes for 3 years in one day?
Well, so, if he was in the public service, I did not have need to collect his tax documents. That would not mean that his taxes were not being deducted. So if he had need to collect them based on this nomination, he can collect them even for 5 years, even for 3 years, even for 10 years. But that does not mean that they were paid that day. So I don't know. He will answer that question. But let's, the South-South has had it say, North-Central has had it say, South-East has had it say. It will take about, but let's finish all the zones before the civil senator, if I remember, accuses us of neglecting any zone. Senator Yari, is there anything that Northwest wants to add to so he can respond across the zones? You can go ahead. add something? The Southwest after Senator Abiru.
Finally, thank you very much, Mr. President, as chair. My distinguished colleagues, I remain Abdulaziz Abubakar. I represent Zamfara West. Mr. President, I am from Zamfara State. Let me first join my colleagues to congratulate the nominee and very intelligent person, which I happened to have opportunity to work with when I was governor in Zamfara State. One, being me a neighbor. All the three senators from Katsina State have spoken, and I from Zamfara State, when I come in and someone crack a joke that my boss is there, I said I would do bow on his behalf to ask him to go. But we are doing the things that we're supposed to do. Mr. President, nominee, my simple question is what we have undergone between us. You have built so many projects in Zamfara State when I was in charge then. But the only thing that if Almighty God has selected you to be in the Ministry of Housing, what will you do in terms of providing infrastructure to those what you are doing in putting houses for low-income earners? Number two question is, we have issues with the housing generally, deficit as stated by Senator Aleru. And if you go to our neighboring states, you go to Niger, you go to Senegal, Benin, they have a program which, to my take, they are supposed to come to learn from us how we're doing it. But a very excellent, where you came from and where I came from, the type of houses we live, our people lives there. You know, it's not up to the standard of human being to be there. So there's a lot of things need to be done in terms of supporting, building the housing from the private sector, what you are doing. So what you intend, collaboration to do with the private sector, to give them a kind of level playing ground, not only possible servant that you have their salary you're holding, but how do you intend to do it as community? We have a little experience. I believe you have went there with the ambassador of South Korea. You have interaction on how they are doing their low-cost housing on the farmers and other business community. So what do you intend to do more? One, as I said, on infrastructure or what you already have existence now. And two, what do you intend to do on our own local people that you found at least 20, 30 in a household? If care is not taken, you will find out that there is 3-4 people with the father, with mother, and 3 or 4 children in one room. So what do we do? And we have available opportunity to improve that one. So that's my submission, Mr. Nominee. I wish you all the best. I believe you are right to be there, and your patience has brought you to where we are. I followed the suit of my 3 distinguished colleagues from Katsina State to congratulate you, and I pray Almighty God should give you the wisdom to do more on the higher level, more than what you did in the Federal Mortgage Bank. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Appreciate it.
Senator Abiru for 1 minute.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. President, sitting in as the chair, and my distinguished colleagues. I also join my colleagues in congratulating the nominee, and I also wish you well. And I've also gone through your resume, and I'm quite impressed with your accomplishments. My own question is just very simple, and it's not too far from what my colleagues had said, but I'll rather put it in another context, is that if you look at our housing deficit in this country, as at 1991, we were about 7 million short. 2022 or 2023 is about 28 million, which is correct. Now, you have had the privilege of being in this particular industry of mortgage financing, either in the private capacity or in the public, because you are also the managing director of Federal Mortgage Bank between 2017 and 2022. So I would like you to share with us, because in part of your accomplishments, you said you achieved a provision of mortgage loans that you kind of put in place, maybe of the beneficiaries got from you or underwritten by you, just about 5,938, while renovation loans for houses, again, another 77,000. But again, the major deficit still remains. So I just like you to share with us, what are the real issues in our mortgage financing, and how best can we provide shelters for our larger population. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my distinguished colleagues. That will be my own question for now. Thank you.
The nominee, please go ahead and answer.
Your Excellency, the President of the Senate, distinguished senators here present, thank you very much for this support. I start with the question by my elder distinguished Senator Alero, discussing about the 15 million housing deficit we have in the country. This figure, it's always rising. Before the time I came to FMBN, it was 15. Before I left, it was 17, and now someone was telling me it was 18. So the actual figures are not well defined or are not well known. So when I'm given this opportunity, I think the first thing I'll do two things. One, I will have to engage the services of some data consultants who will have to establish that, so that to have the exact figure. But majorly, we have to engage the Nigerian Population Commission, who they are about to conduct census for Nigeria within the next few months or to come. They are doing also the housing census. We need to rely on them. Maybe when I become the minister, I will have to engage them to ensure that they include the data capture for even the number of houses we are having in relation to the population we are having. From there, you can know what is the deficit. This is one thing which we have to do in order to establish the real deficit of housing we are having. Because we have to know that housing is vital to national and economic development of the nation. And in order to do that, it needs a lot of financing. That financing, I think we need to leverage on many things, especially the current government. We have to push for the utilization of cash reserve fund, about 5 trillion naira in the CBN. This, I think the government of Tinubu is trying to push this utilization of at least 20% of this 5 trillion naira to be dedicated, to set aside to promote long-term mortgage within 20 years. We have to also come to the National Assembly again to push for review of the PENCOM regulations to allow for leveraging some of the large fund that is in the PENCOM to be utilized in investment into the real estate or mortgage real estate. These are some of the things we have to do, but the informal sector, as you rightly said, distinguished Senator Alero, we have to know that the informal sector constitutes over 80%, almost 70% of the population of the country. And these are the people that are left behind. We have to ensure that we bring them on board to ensure that they are carried along. The major issue of accessing mortgage is directed, as questioned by Senator Dangiwa, distinguished senator, is the issue of affordability and accessibility. We have to ensure that for Nigerians to have access to mortgage, and the mortgage has to be very affordable. And in order to do that, we have created, while I was in mortgage, we have created cooperative housing development loan, where cooperative societies who know their own income, level of income, they can design houses based on their own level, based on their own income, and then approach the private mortgage bank of Nigeria for them to give them the loan to build the houses based on their own income. You can build a house of 3 million or 5 million based on your income, and someone can decide to say he wants to build a 30 million naira income. There is also leverage of the individual construction loan there in that bank. We created that individual construction loan whereby if you have a good title, you approach the bank with your title, and they give you loan to build your house incrementally over years, over a period of time. They give you 30%, then incrementally when you finish that, they give you another 30%. So that's why in order to increase housing in Nigeria, we have to focus on affordable housing. And to do that, you have to ensure that you facilitate recapitalization of Federal Mortgage of Nigeria to 500 billion naira. It's very important for Federal Mortgage of Nigeria to be recapitalized in order for any access of both the formal and informal sector to access mortgage. We have to review the laws established in those places. I once approached National Assembly during my time to review the laws, and the National Assembly graciously approved both the two bills to review the law of Federal Mortgage of Nigeria and to review the law of the National Housing Fund. It's only that we couldn't get the approval of Mr. President. He couldn't assent to it. It was turned back. So we have to lead also the reform of other agencies such as the Federal Housing Authority. Federal Housing Authority is meant to build houses for Nigerians, whether the formal or the informal. But they are left to only build houses for most of the government workers. They can collaborate with Federal Mortgage of Nigeria in order to build affordable houses across the local governments of the Federation. That one will give access to housing, even the informal, even the low and medium income earners. I received the next question from my senator, Isinazo. He's talking about how can we do to make NHF more relevant. To make National Housing Fund relevant is you have to ensure that you empower the Federal Mortgage of Nigeria to make it more to capitalize. A mortgage securitization with this review of this of the Pension Act, I think that we can achieve that. And the access of the 1 trillion naira from the Federal Cash Reserve that is in the CBN, it will be able to assist us to achieve that. My distinguished Senator Ayari, you discussed about the infrastructure of some of the houses and also the urban renewal. Most of our rural areas, you'll find that they need some renewal. They need urban renewal. We can only achieve that through cooperative societies. A cluster of houses, they can decide to approach a mortgage bank to have a single-digit interest rate within themselves to access a mortgage that they can improve the setting of their environment through that. That's why we have the home renovation loan. It's a 1 million naira that is given to individuals to renovate their own houses. People who have accessed this single-digit interest loan, and they are able to not only renovate their houses, some have even built their houses. In most of the local governments from where I came from, they access that 1 million naira to buy a plot of land of 200,000, and they use 500 to 600,000 to build their own shelter, a 3-room and in a courtyard. That is what has been, that's what they have done, and many people have accessed that. The last question, which is what is the real problem of housing in the country? The real problem is that of cost of fund. Most people who want to build houses, they have to approach commercial banks in order to access fund to build these houses. So government has to ensure that they empower the government institutions that can give single digits affordable interest rates in order for people to have access to this fund. Cheap funds, at least in single digits. There is also access to land. You'll find that it's very difficult for land to get a land in some of the states, especially in the southern and central states of the Federation. In the northern states, I don't think the land is not that difficult to get. So we have to ensure that we collaborate with the stakeholders like state governors to ensure that they liberalize this access to land. For you to access a CFO, it has to be fast and quick and ensure that people get access to land very quick and cheap. That's why the land registry has to be digitalized to create one-stop shop to facilitate approvals and access to land for people. The houses has to be affordable, and for you to have affordable houses, there is the need then to have a cheap fund in order to do that, at least in a single digit interest rate. Thank you, Excellency.
Architect Dangiwa, I must thank you for, you've spoken a lot, but actually it's actually in your area of expertise. You may go to the Federal Executive Council, and then you are given entirely a different ministry. So you must be versatile in all areas. But I think so. But just for me, taking a look at the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, are you satisfied that with the cleanliness of Abuja, the urban beautification, the darkness that pervades some of the streets in the night and causing insecurity? If you are indeed given a position of responsibility that will have to do with beautification and urban renewal, what would you like to see as a federal capital? Because the difference between our federal capital and others is that if you look at us from space, we are dark. But if you look at other federal capitals, they are bright, like with tiny stars, because of the lightings and all that. So I hope if that kind of opportunity is given to you, you look at that area well. So I want to thank you. You don't need to answer. I'm just making an observation. Thank you so much, and you can take a bow. Please, the next nominee, please. Sorry, distinguished colleagues, this is a very serious business, and we need also time bar. We need to make sure that we finish this. Nigerians are interested in knowing their next ministers, and we have to sacrifice, and I thank you for sacrificing. But is that the wish of 30 minutes? Okay, you can move the motion then.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I move that we shift, we step down 1 hour for break.
Leader of the Senate, they are requesting for a 30-minute break to enable them come back by 4:30. So,
Mr. President, very, very distinguished colleagues, the motion that was moved by my distinguished colleague, with due respect to him, could not have come from him. When it comes to matters of adjournment, when it comes to matters of adjournment, whether it is temporary adjournment or adjournment to the next legislative day, is a motion that should come from the leadership. And I refer to Order 11B of our standing orders. Yes, Mr. President, Order 11B reads, in all cases not provided for in the standing order or by sessional or other orders or practice of the Senate shall, by resolution, regulate its procedure. And Mr. President, much as it will be important for our distinguished colleagues to rest temporarily, I want to say again that I am very familiar with the thinking of majority of our colleagues. And when I say majority, I refer to it on both sides of the aisles. The seriousness of this calls for a situation where, rather than make a motion for temporary adjournment, I would just say that Mr. President should take legislative notice of the fact that people who need to step out for refreshment should be able to, or people who need to step out to pray also should be able to do that while the rest of us continue with this. And it is not possible to finish everything that we have on the other paper today, but let's keep going. And when it comes to a point where we need to step down the rest, we will do that. Thank you, sir.
Minority Leader.
Is that a motion? Is there a motion? Is that a motion? It's not. It's just an observation. It's not a motion now. Not a motion.
Mr. President, may I move? Mr. President, I stand to move that the Senate adjourns for a period of 10 minutes. For a period of 10 minutes. 30 minutes. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, as a Democrat, I move that the Senate hereby adjourn for 30 minutes. For 30 minutes to enable refresh and come back to continue.
Distinguished colleagues, the leader of the Senate has moved that the Senate should have a brief recess of 30 minutes and come back to continue its function. So may I invite the minority leader to probably second the motion if he deems fit.
Mr. President of the Senate, distinguished colleagues, I hereby stand to second the motion moved by the Leader of the House that do take Leader of the Senate that we do take 30 minutes recess and come back to continue the business of the day. I so second, sir.
Distinguished colleagues, a motion has been moved for 30 minutes recess by the leader and seconded by the minority leader that with this Senate should stand adjourned for just brief 30 minutes and resume by 4:30. Those in support of the motion that we take a brief recess and resume our sittings by 4:30, say aye. Those against say nay. You see, the ayes have it.
You've been watching the live broadcast of the screening of ministerial nominees by the Senate. Screened just before the recess was Ahmed Musa Dangiwa from Katsina State, who was the former CEO and MD of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. His screening followed that of David Umahi of Ebonyi State, Adebayo Olawale Edun of Ogun State, and Nasir el-Rufai of Kaduna State.